From 1991 to 2001, DC used to release themed annuals of some of their titles. Annuals basically being extra-sized issues of certain running series. Some of these were based on an event, like the tie-ins to Bloodlines or Our Worlds at War, while others had some random motif, like that time a bunch of heroes became apes. The one I'm looking at today is Planet DC, the series of 2001 annuals, and the last time DC did this as of this video. The theme of these annuals was to have the heroes who are getting an annual team up with a new hero who would be from a different part of the world. What I'm interested in is how many of them went on to become stars in their own right. Yeah, no, none of them, sorry. Yeah, I don't think most of these characters made a huge impact, except for a few question mark, kinda, but we'll get to that. But was it their fault? Was there something fundamentally wrong in their inception? Or were they just forgotten once Planet DC had become a distant memory? I'll be taking a look at the characters, their debuts, what they did afterwards, if they did anything at all. Unfortunately, I haven't read any of the annuals, or so I thought, because as it turns out, I actually had the Planet DC annual featuring the Flash, which was also my introduction to the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick, who also appears in this story. It doesn't really bode well that I could only tell that I had read a Planet DC annual after I looked it up, does it? For the rest, I'll be relying on the DC Fandom Wiki, which has always been there to support my love for DC's characters, as well as other sources. So, let's begin with Aruna Shende is a stunt person from Madras, India with a secret, the ability to shapeshift. In their first and only appearance, as per my knowledge, they work alongside Batgirl to investigate a kidnapping. This inspires them to become a hero in their own right, which was sadly never followed up. The only thing I found was that they had joined the Indian superhero team, The Doomed, but considering all we see is their name on a list and nothing else, this doesn't even count as a cameo. Which is really unfortunate, as not only was Aruna a rare Indian superhero from DC Comics, they were also gender fluid, something not explored with that, depth, at the time at least. I have struggled to find if there was any plans to use them, but if you find anything, please let me know in the comments. Well, at least Aruna got a mention in Doomsday Clock. As for I couldn't find anything outside her first appearance. Rosemary Fields is a child capable of summoning a boggart to help her out. Think Stan from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure mixed with a poltergeist. This is because she and a bunch of other kids were experimented on as fetuses, and now they all have stands, and the person who experimented on them was actually trying to create English superheroes and had the legal right to take her away if her parents died, which they did because superhero comics, and Batman is here because it's his annual, and the guy who experimented on her is totally a good guy, and she willingly goes to him at the end because why not? Yeah, this one does not seem to have been one of the stronger ones. Moving on to archaeologist Sala of Tunisia discovered a gateway to the Babylonian underworld, accidentally releasing several deities and demons. However, it would turn out that Sala was a descendant of Ishtar, the Babylonian goddess of love and war, and she would then team up with Green Lantern Kyle Rayner, who was a classmate of her from art school. Just in case you forgot, Kyle was an artist, to fight the deities and seal them off, trapping herself along with them. Now, Sala seems to have been an exception to everyone here, as her annual got a follow-up in the miniseries JLA Gatekeeper, written and drawn by her creator Tim Truman. Newer readers probably won't know this, but there was a time when DC published a huge number of miniseries featuring the JLA. Some canon, some not, some flat out weird. When I complain about the Justice League not being what it was, this is what I'm referring to. Not the sheer number of titles published to capitalize on the main series' popularity, that was just to get you to buy more, but the fact that this team felt deserving of the title The World's Greatest Heroes. The fact that Sala starred as a main character in a miniseries starring the JLA is a lot more than most of the other Planet DC heroes got, putting her in a position of honor among her peers. If there was anyone from these annuals that people remember fondly, it's the Janissary. Selma Tolon of Turkey was a doctor working for the Red Crescent, who discovered the scimitar of Sultan Suleiman as well as a book of spells hidden by Merlin from Etrigan. She used them to become the superhero the Janissary. In her annual, she would work alongside the JLA to defeat the demon Iblis, at the end of which she would be offered member in the League. She would decline, and that was kinda it for her. She made cameos here and there, most notably as a group of female heroes fighting a group of female villains in the pages of Wonder Woman, where she defeats the body doubles off-panel. However, there's something about her that just clicked with readers, and she refused to be forgotten, despite having only a handful of appearances. Oh, Soseh, you were done so dirty. Okay, we need some context here before we talk about Soseh Mykros, the second Nemesis. As mentioned previously, the JLA was huge at the time of these annuals, so it felt appropriate to have a Justice Society of America title rebranded in a similar way as JSA. The resulting series was a massive hit, combining older heroes as well as legacy characters taking up the mantles of the previous generation. Now, the title JSA had a running subplot about a mysterious group calling themselves the Council, which is where Nemesis comes in. In her debut, we find that she was the daughter of a high-ranking member who had experimented on her and her sister. While her sister remained loyal to their father, Soseh, realizing that the Council were evil, decided to stand up against them. She would end up joining the JLA as a reservist, fighting alongside them several times. However, her story would soon be cut short. While investigating a council hideout, she would encounter Black Adam, who was in the middle of his anti-hero phase at the time. He's been through a few. Adam had already killed all the members of the council, including her father, basically ending her subplot, and offered Soseh a place alongside her to liberate his country, Kondak. The savvy readers among you have already detected the warning bells. And yeah, Soseh would be killed in the story arc Black Rain. The worst part is, among her powers, she had a healing factor. I'm not saying that anybody with a healing factor can't be killed. I would like to point out that if she was someone like Deathstroke, someone with similar abilities and skills, she would have survived the blast that just killed her. I'm just saying. To some of you, the name Bushido might ring a bell. Keep listening to that, and also subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon so you never miss a video as my upload schedule grows increasingly erratic. Ryuko Orsono was the latest in a long line of heroes in his family. He had made a vow to kill the Tengu who had killed his mother. This Tengu had possessed Beast Boy, bringing the Titans into the story. You can guess what happens next. Bushido wants to decapitate Beast Boy, the Titans won't let him, but in the end it all works out. The Tengu is defeated, Beast Boy gets to keep his head, and Bushido joins the Titans. Wait, that last part didn't happen. Right, okay, yeah. So yeah, Bushido does end up in Titans LA, where his most notable action is getting a mop to clean up a mess left behind after a fight. His next most prominent appearance would be his last, as he gets sliced in half by Superboy Prime in Infinite Crisis. The worst part is you can see the signs of his impending demise, very similar to what happened to Soseh. He appears after several years in a massive crossover. Yeah, I really don't need to go on, do I? It's easy to kill off someone who people barely remember to show that your story has stakes. Unfortunately, not everyone forgets. Some of us do remember. This story involves Superman teaming up with a trio of Mexican heroes to fight an eco-terrorist in Mexico City. Arcata uses an artifact to teleport with the help of shadows. Iman is a teen genius who has developed his own power armor. And El Muerto is an undead corpse brought back to life. Iman looks up to Superman while El Muerto no longer does so, as he believes that Superman not only failed to save his life, but doesn't do enough to help the people in his own country. Superman, for his part, does acknowledge this and promises to do more, leading to El Muerto reconciling with his idol. All three of these heroes don't get much more than cameos after this annual. However, there is one of them not worth noting. While Acrata made a semi-important cameo in the last Justice League story arc pre the New 52, and El Muerto showed up in Infinite Crisis, Iman would make a much grander cameo than the other two in Final Crisis, where he participated in the battle to take back Bloodhaven from Darkseid's forces. This spread where Iman appears somehow works better than most others. There are no descriptors telling us who he is, his speech isn't translated, and the heroes he's fighting alongside aren't the ones you would usually see. Sure, you got guys like Jon Stewart and Supergirl, but the former doesn't last long, and the latter is stuck fighting a corrupted Mary Marvel for most of the fight. Iman's presence in such a ragtag group consisting of guys like Frankenstein, Jake, Stripe, Blue Devil, and the Metalmen as a bunch of vehicles they're riding on really sells the idea that this is humanity's last stand, where every last hero on Earth must come together and fight. Even though we kind of know everything is going to be okay because this is a mainstream comic, but let's not think about that. Kudos to Grant Morrison, or whoever suggested including Iman in this story, and similar kudos for not having him die. They actually play with this trope in Final Crisis. There is a scene where it looks like Iman is about to be killed, but Frankenstein shows up at the last minute, shoots his attackers, and he lives. Hooray! I see what you did there. I appreciate that. Ah, yes. The only one of these I've actually read. And the Super Malone are sure here. The story involves the superhero team of Argentina being trapped by one of their foes, and it's up to Wally to save them. And Jay Garrick as well, who was somehow called before him, even though Wally is faster and the current Flash, and you know what? Never mind. The visuals of this comic, however, are gorgeous. I should say that up front. They're drawn by Argentine artist Enrique Alcatana, which is about the only thing that saves this book. I mean, it really doesn't seem like Argentina's greatest heroes are all that great when we see most of them trapped for almost the entire issue. Yes, one of them, La Salamanca, defeats the villain after she's freed, but she's also used as bait to call Wally to Argentina, and the comic makes no secret about the fact that he is attracted to her, despite him being, as both Jay and Oracle remind him, married at the time. Okay, I'll take a minute and put aside my negativity. This comic isn't that bad, but it certainly doesn't do the characters any favors by portraying them as needing to be saved by the main hero. And as you'd expect, the Super Malone only make a minor appearance, I think, in Wonder Woman, and they've seemed to have been forgotten completely. Still, this comic does have some really great art, and if you're a fan of Enrique Alcatana, consider picking it up. There is an article by Chris Sims that kinda sums up my feelings on how most non-American heroes tend to be treated. It's been a running gag among my friends that in comics, only white Americans ever find meteors, get splashed with chemicals, or get visited by spacemen. Everyone else, from Jack-o'-lantern to Black Bison to the Gaucho to Apache Chief to Samurai and so on, has to have a power that relates to their race or their country. Specifically, the broad stereotypes drawn from white Americans' perception of their race or country. It's almost inescapable, and it reinforces the idea that non-white characters are defined solely by their ethnic differences. What is interesting for me is that several of the Planet DC characters actually kinda subvert this. Aruna's shape-shifting is not a blessing from the gods, and Soseh gets her powers as a result of experimentation. Even some of them who do end up falling into this, like Sala and the Janissary, are more than just a series of stereotypes. I have seen people still fondly remember the Janissary to this day and speak fondly of her. Nowadays, any attempt at diversity is met with scorn by certain people who feel that they are being ignored in favor of the woke crowd. To them, I have only one thing to say. People who aren't like you have always existed. Don't get mad that their existence is getting acknowledgement. There are plenty of counter arguments which I could respond to, but this video is long enough as it is. I'll end by saying that Planet DC was a well-meant, if poorly executed, series that could have led to some amazing characters. And to those who say, well, they made a terrible first impression and therefore shouldn't be explored further, Wolverine, Marvel's Wolverine, that Wolverine, was so poorly received initially, he was going to be killed off. So, if he can get more chances, why not them?